Hey folks, this is Kalani. Welcome back to Legion Beta, where we're going to be having a look at Vengeance Demon Hunter. Now this is the tanking spec. So as with all of these videos, we'll go through their basic abilities, their talents, and then their artifact and how that affects how we play. For this video, I'll also have a look at how Demon Hunter Tank is playing, both in dungeon and solo environments, just to give you a taste of that. Whacking a dummy as a tank isn't all that thrilling. So, first things first, we'll look at their passives, because passives are always important. For a tank Demon Hunter, you only have a few. Demonic Wards, your tattoos reduce magic damage taken by 10%, increase your stamina by 20%, and your armor by 120%, so a pretty basic tank passive. We have Double Jump, as all Demon Hunters do. Your mastery is Fellblood. Demon Spikes reduces physical damage taken by an additional 27%, and also increases your attack power by 27%. Obviously, dependent on mastery. Shattered Souls. Killing a target will sometimes shatter their soul, leaving a soul fragment behind for 20 seconds. The soul fragment will be consumed when you approach it, healing you for a lot of health. So it's kind of similar to the way orbs work with monks, but kind of better. Consuming a demon soul will grant you 20% increased damage for 15 seconds. That's a nice little bonus for demon hunters. So a lot of tank demon hunter revolves around those souls, and if it's not the large souls from an ad dying somewhere, it's the lesser soul fragments that we generate ourselves. So our first ability is Shear. Shears an enemy for a bit of physical damage and has a small chance to shatter a lesser soul fragment from your target that heals you for about 74k when consumed, and it generates 12 pain, which is the resource we'll be using to fuel all of our abilities. We thrive off of pain. It's basically rage, so we're going to build it with Shear. There's the soul fragment, which instantly got absorbed. Sometimes it goes a little further, like that one. And then we can generate a bit of pain, and we can spend it with our next ability, Soul Cleave. Costs 40 pain, viciously strike all enemies in front of you, so it isn't AoE. I can show you that. So you can see it hits both targets, and it strikes for about 122k damage and heals yourself for about 172. And it consumes all soul fragments within 20 yards, big or small. So we can get some soul fragments. And you can see that when it's within 20 yards, you'll get a little 1 on your Soul Cleave, and you'll also get a buff of Soul Fragment. So you can happily consume everything in 20 yards for the health of the Soul Cleave and the health of consuming those soul shards. So it's a lot of self-healing, And then the other basic ability that we have is Immolation Aura. Engulf yourself in flames, instantly causing a bit of fire damage to enemies within 8 yards and radiating more fire damage every second, and it lasts for 6 seconds. And it generates 20 pain over 6 seconds. It's on a pretty short cooldown too, so it's an AoE. And then basically it helps you generate pain to spend it on all that self-healing. And those, honestly, are your rotational abilities. So let's have a look at some of the more special ones. We have Fiery Brand. Brand an enemy with a demonic symbol, instantly dealing a lot of fire damage and reducing the damage they do to you by 40% for 8 seconds. That is a crazy tank cooldown, and you apply it to the target. So that's really cool. It's on a minute cooldown, it lasts for 8 seconds, and it's just a nice brand. It's also a lot of your damage, honestly. It's kind of crazy. Then we also have Sigils. So I'll go through the Sigils. Sigil of Flame places a Sigil of Flame at the target location that activates after 2 seconds, deals a bit of fire damage and more fire damage over 6 seconds to all enemies affected by the Sigil. Boom! Then we also have Sigil of Chains. Place a Sigil of Chains at the target location that activates after 2 seconds. I don't know if this is going to work on these dummies, but basically it's an AoE death grip, just a shorter range. And it also reduces their movement speed for 7 seconds by 70% on a 2-minute cooldown. So if they could move, they would be pulled to the center of that. Probably see it later in the footage in a dungeon or solo. And then we also have Sigil of Silence. Places a Sigil of Silence, which does pretty much what you would expect. After 2 seconds, it silences everybody in it for 6 seconds on a minute cooldown. Really nice for pulling AoE packs, especially if there's more than one caster. Then we also have Throw Glaive, pretty basic, on a really short cooldown. Doesn't really do much, but helps with pulling. Deals about 27k physical damage and can ricochet to 2 additional enemies within 10 yards, and it generates high threat. So very, very useful for pulling. Also looks kind of pretty. Then we have Infernal Strike, which is a glorified heroic leap. It truly is. Leap through the air towards target location, dealing fire damage to all enemies within 6 yards. 2 charges, 20-second recharge, 30-yard range. It's got a nice graphic where you turn into your metamorphosis as well. And that's kind of your basic abilities. We also have Consume Magic, which is a standard interrupt. It's a 15-second cooldown, and it generates 50 pain on a successful interrupt, which is really nice. And then we also have our Taunt, which is Torment. It's just your basic taunt on an 8-second cooldown. And the last ability we have is Metamorphosis. On a 3-minute cooldown, this is our big cooldown. It generates 10 pain every 1 second, lasts for 20 seconds, and you increase current and maximum health by 30%. Turns you into a big demon as well. The thing I don't like about this is that it doesn't use your fancy artifact weapon, so you just kind of punch people for a while. And the only real benefit you get tank-wise is generating a lot of pain, so you can happily use your pain spending abilities more, but either way, it's a nice cooldown. So let's look at some of our defensive and utility spells. We have Demon Spikes, which is what our mastery affected. 10 pain, 13.5 second recharge, and 2 charges. Lasts for 6 seconds, so about 50% uptime if you can do this perfectly. Surge with Fell Power, increasing your parry chance by 20% and reducing physical damage taken by 37%, dependent on mastery, for 6 seconds. That's a really easy one to keep up, and you basically want to keep that up at all times. You can see the spikes come out of your back. Cool. And you can stack the duration if you really want to. So that's that. Then we also have Empower Wards. Reduces magical damage taken by 30% for 6 seconds on a 20-second cooldown, which is pretty ridiculous. So you can use that as often as you like without really having to worry about it. And then we have Darkness. On a 3-minute cooldown, this is the big one, summons darkness around you in an 8-yard radius, cloaking friendly targets and granting a 15% chance to avoid all damage from an attack. Lasts 8 seconds. So, people within the darkness basically have a chance to not get hit by something. I mean, it's a 15% chance, it's not anything close to reliable, but if it does not hit, that could be so much potential damage just gone for a single target, which is really cool, but really unreliable. We also have Imprison. Imprison's a demon for 1 minute. It's our standard CC. Only works on demons, sadly, but it is a 20-yard range, 10-second cooldown, lasts for a minute, a limit of 1. And then we also have Spectral Sight. Allows you to see enemies and treasures through physical barriers, as well as enemies that are stealth and invisible. Lasts 10 seconds, and attacking or taking damage disrupts the sight. So you can see, for demons specifically, it goes red. You can see a demon over there through the wall. And one fun thing about this is that if you do this in Dalaran, you can see some of the NPCs are actually demons, and you can attack them, and you can start a little event, I guess, where people can come and kill the demon, and you get some Order Hall resources, and that's about it. So it's not that exciting, but it's still a nice little tidbit. So that's all for the basic abilities. It's pretty standard. You got your build and spend, as well as some standard defensive abilities and self-healing. A lot of mobility, really, with the Demon Hunter. When you double jump and glide, you go a lot further, even if you cancel the glide. So that's quite interesting, and then obviously you can happily jump back and forth. So let's have a look at the talents, because these affect quite a lot and change quite a lot and can change the way you play, which is the most exciting thing for Tank Demon Hunter for me. So we've got Abyssal Strike. Infernal Strike range is increased by 10 yards and its cooldown is reduced by 5 seconds. That's pretty boring, but, you know, potentially useful. Agonizing Flames. Immolation Aura increases your movement speed by 30% and deals 50% increased damage. It's my favourite one. Immolation Aura does a ton of damage with this active. Then Razor Spikes. While Demon Spikes is active, you deal 20% increased physical damage on your melee attack snare targets by 50% for 6 seconds. So here you've already kind of got a choice. You can go more fire damage or you can go more physical damage, and that's kind of how it goes throughout the entire thing. So we've got Feast of Souls. Soul Cleave also heals you for an additional 70k, give or take, over 6 seconds, so about, what, 10k just above per second. Fallout. Immolation's Aura initial burst has a chance to shatter lesser soul fragments from enemies, so when you first go boom, that can shatter the lesser soul fragments that you use to heal yourself. Burning Alive. Every 2 seconds your fiery brand deals damage over time, basically, and spreads from the primary target to nearby enemies, which means that 40% damage reduction suddenly goes from one target after 2 seconds to another target. So for the 8 seconds that Firebrand is active, you could have up to 3 targets doing 40% less damage to you, making it an incredibly potent talent to take, especially for AoE situations. Fellblade. Charge to your target and deal a lot of fire damage, and Shear has a chance to reset the cooldown of Fellblade. So it's a charge, which again is kind of crazy considering our already overpowered mobility, and then we can reset it with Shear. Now it's only a chance, but it does seem to be a relatively high chance, but obviously RNG is either going to be with you or against you for that one. It also generates 20 pain, making it one of the highest generating abilities that you can have, so if you want to use a lot of pain, Fellblade is a very good talent to pick. Flame Crash. Infernal Strike creates a sigil of flame when you land. So having 2 charges, you could basically have those 2 thrown down and then throw down your own sigil, which is a lot of AoE, and sadly the damage over time component doesn't stack, but it's a lot of damage either way. Then we have Gluttony. Consuming a soul fragment increases the damage of your next soul cleave by 10%, stacking up to 5 times. Feed the Demons. Consuming a soul fragment reduces the remaining cooldown of demon spikes by 1 second. Fracture. Brutally slam your target for a lot of physical damage and shatter 2 lesser soul fragments from them. This is one of the only talents which will guarantee you some soul fragments, so it makes it very powerful. It does a lot of damage as well. So you can see guaranteed 2 soul fragments every single time. The downside is that it does cost quite a lot of pain. And I probably should mention, there's a limit to the soul fragments. So you can see as I spawn more, the others just disappear. So the limit right now seems to be 5. I've managed to push it to 6 somehow. I don't fully understand how, but it does seem to be a cap of 5. Soul Rending. Gain 50% leech while Metamorphosis is active, meaning all damage you deal while Metamorphosis is active, 50% of that goes straight to your health, making it a very big cooldown instead of just a big cooldown. Concentrated Sigils. All sigils are now targeted at your location, and the duration of their effects is increased by 2 seconds. So if it's the flame one, it goes down at your feet, and they burn over 8 seconds instead of 6. If it's Sigil of Change, their movement speed reduction lasts for 8 seconds instead of 6, and they're silenced in the Sigil of Silence for 8 seconds instead of 6. Bear in mind, all of these will then be placed at your feet, meaning you can't place them where you want to, which is actually quite a price to pay. For some it works wonders, other times it is quite problematic. For example, if you're happily tanking a group and you don't want to click on where you're standing, it's very nice for the Sigil of Flame, but if you want to pull some casters from somewhere, you can't start with the Sigil of Silence, making that a bit of a problem. Fell Eruption impales the target for a lot of chaos damage and stuns them for 2 seconds, and it does 100% more damage against targets immune to stuns, 20 yard range, 35 second cooldown, and costs 10 pain. It's a lot of damage for just 10 pain. Quite a bit of damage. Then we have Quicken Sigils. All sigils activate 1 second faster and their range is increased by 10 yards. So instead of them taking 2 seconds, they'll take 1 second, and obviously you've got that extra range. And you now have to place them again. So much faster and much bigger. Then we have Fell Devastation. 30 pain, channeled, 1 minute cooldown, unleash the Fell within you, damaging enemies directly in front of you for a lot of fire damage over 2 seconds, and causing damage, heals you for up to 740k health. This is amazing. It's one of my favourite talents so far, and it's just so satisfying to jump into a group and go raw. And it heals you for a crazy amount, so it's a very good tank cooldown at the same time. Then we have Blade Turning. Parrying an attack increases the pain generation of your next shear by 50%, which ties in very well with Demon Spikes, because when you use Demon Spikes you gain parry chance. If you then parry, you use shear, generate more pain, and you get your Demon Spikes back more reliably. So it's a very nice combination there. Bear in mind that if you could also tie that to the Razor Spikes up here, which increases your physical damage, you would actually increase the damage of that shear and any physical damage you deal, and throw it together with Feed the Demon, and you could have Demon Spikes potentially active all the time. But you need to be very good to do that. We have Spirit Bomb. Launch a nearby soul fragment at your target, dealing a bit of shadow damage to all nearby enemies and afflicting them with frailty for 15 seconds, and you heal for 5% of all damage you deal to enemies with frailty. It does require a nearby soul fragment, so you'll need to spend one of them on this ability. So you're kind of sacrificing the immediate heal from the soul fragment to the frailty buff. So we can see the frailty buff here. The casting Demon Hunter is healed for 5% of all damage they deal to you. getting a nice amount of heals there. So that's another way to play, I guess. Last resort, sustaining fatal damage instead transforms you into Metamorphosis form and returns you to 30% health. Can only occur every 3 minutes, so basically you could have 2 Metamorphoses, except you would have to die for one of them, and it's kind of a failsafe if your healer is taking a nap. Nether Bond. As a 2-minute cooldown, bind yourself to a friendly player for 15 seconds, and every second the health of you and your target is redistributed such that you are at the same percentage of maximum health. Basically, it's a personal spirit link totem between you and one other person, making this quite valuable, I would think. Initially when I saw this I was thinking, oh cool, I can kind of tie to the other tank's health and he can heal me if I'm taking too much damage. But the opposite is true as well. You could use this as an external cooldown for another tank as long as you were getting healed as well. Meaning you could help out your tank, or the tank could help out you, dependent on the situation. So it makes it quite versatile and quite powerful, but on a 2-minute cooldown, it's kind of sad. Then we have Soul Barrier on a 20-second cooldown, making me feel much happier. Costs 30 pain, but you shield yourself for 8 seconds, absorbing 140k damage, and consuming a soul fragment adds 35k to the shield. Soul Barrier's absorption effect cannot be reduced below 17,000, and it consumes all soul fragments within 20 yards. So pop that down here, get some soul fragments, preferably not ones at my feet. And then we can see it's going to consume them and give us a shield for 211,000 damage. So that's all of the talents taken care of. Let's have a look at the artifact itself. Obviously we're a tank, so some of this might be a little boring. Thankfully the first ability we get is really cool and lends itself really well to the playstyle. Soul Carver, carve into the soul of your target, dealing a lot of fire damage and more fire damage over 3 seconds. It immediately gives you 2 lesser soul fragments and 1 every additional second. So you end up with 5, and it's on a 1-minute cooldown. Which is a really nice start for a fight, especially because you can pair that with something like Soul Barrier to get a fully charged shield to start the fight, making it very useful indeed. So let's have a look at some of the other abilities, the passives and the special ones. We've got Tormented Souls, increases the damage of Soul Cleave by 15%. Infernal Force increases the damage dealt by Infernal Strike by 15%. Defensive Spikes increases the chance to parry by an additional 10% for the first 3 seconds after activating Demon Spikes, so that's half the duration of your Demon Spikes and an extra 10% chance to parry. We have Embrace the Pain, increased maximum health gain from Metamorphosis by an additional 5% up to 15, making that really powerful actually, so you gain 45% instead of 30. Then we have Painbringer, each soul fragment you consume reduces all damage you take by 3% for 4 seconds. Sadly the percentage damage reduction is one that stacks and not the duration. Then we'll go down here. Devour Souls, Soul Cleave heals for an additional 3% of your maximum health. Will of the Illidari increases maximum health by 15%. Honed Blades increases damage dealt by Shear by 15% when that's maxed. Charred Warblades, you heal for 15% of all the fire damage you deal. You can see why I'm going down here. Definitely get that fire damage healing you with all of the abilities being fire, or most of them anyway. Up here we have Shatter the Souls. Shear has a 5% increased chance to shatter a lesser soul fragment from your target while you are below 50% health, meaning if you really need that health, there's a better chance of you actually getting it. Siphon Power. Empower Wards increases your agility by up to 20% for 10 seconds, based on magic damage you take while it is active, so the more magic damage you take, the more damage you deal afterwards. Fiery Demise. Fiery Brand also increases fire damage you deal to the target by 10% up to 30%. Fueled by Pain is our last special ability. You have a chance to activate Metamorphosis for 5 seconds each time you consume a soul fragment, obviously giving you that pain per second as well as the increased health. Aldrachi Design increases your chance to parry by 3% when that's maxed. I've got a few ranks in there from my relics. Demonic Flames increases the duration of Fiery Brand by 2 seconds. Cool. Aura of Pain increases damage dealt by Immolation Aura by 15% when that is maxed. So you can see a lot of it is to do with increasing the damage of your abilities, increasing your damage overall. I'll be honest, Demon Hunter does already deal a disgusting amount of damage, but then it's also about your souls. So you take less damage when you consume souls, you can turn into Metamorphosis when you consume souls, and then you also heal for all fire damage you deal. So that's all of the abilities, talents, and the artifact taken care of. Let's have a look at how I've been playing Demon Hunter thus far. It seems to be doing relatively well. So I've gone for Agonizing Flames to increase the damage of Immolation Aura. A Demon Hunter is a crazy AoE tank. Burning Alive for that effect that I mentioned earlier, where your Fiery Brand 40% damage reduction spreads to other enemies. I've been playing with Flame Crash to give me more Sigils of Flame. Fracture to basically guarantee me soul fragments when I need them. I've gone with Quicken Sigils recently simply because I love the ability to target the Sigil of Silence. Really helps in pulling. And then we've gone with Fell Devastation because that is an amazing damage ability, and Soul Barrier. So this is actually how I've been playing Demon Hunter on the beta thus far. It's been working out really well. Let's go into a dungeon and I'll show you just how well. So we're in the Halls of Valor. We've got a few trash packs I can show you. Typically starting off with your Sigils of Flame and your Infernal Strike, but it's really nice to get the Soul Carver out there to get a Soul Barrier up. Always keep Demon Spikes up to help your healer, and then use your abilities as you see fit. So we've got a lot of damage coming from the Sigils. Use Fiery Brand if you're taking too much damage. Fell Devastation is amazing if you've got AoE, and then Soul Barrier when you need it. Keep Demon Spikes up, and you'll keep your healer very happy. Make sure you keep your Immolation Aura going. Now here's one of the pulls that we can use with Sigil of Silence, so we'll silence the caster in the middle. They'll all come together. That was a Sigil of Chains, which you didn't really need. CC, I wouldn't really say is required, especially in normal dungeons. But if you ever see yourself dipping low, just use your Soul Carve. It should pick you back up, especially if you have Soul Fragments available. Keep all of these abilities on cooldown and you'll pretty much see you topping the meters almost everywhere you go, which I love. Demon Hunter tank is a really satisfying tank to play, especially when you consider how much damage you're dealing. Sadly, if you do use your abilities often, you're going to find them on cooldown when you potentially need them. So go ahead and silence him, get some AoE going for some aggro. As I say, Fell Devastation is amazing on these pulls. Make sure you get your Soul Fragments active whenever you can. Keep Soul Barrier on cooldown. Keep pretty much all of your abilities on cooldown, I'll be honest, and you should have happy days. Demon Hunter is relatively easy to play, especially with this setup. It doesn't really involve a lot of thinking, it's just a lot of button mashing. Make sure you keep everything on cooldown and you'll almost be unstoppable as long as your healer isn't asleep. So that's how I've been playing in dungeons. Let's have a look how this build works out in the world. And it's pretty fantastic. I haven't really had any huge issues. The only problem with Demon Hunter tank really is if you get stunned, you're sort of in a pickle. So let's go ahead and pull pretty much as we want. And you can self-heal like crazy. I mean, can you imagine what this is going to be like when you're healing for a percentage of all the fire damage you deal as well? It's going to be kind of sick. If you ever find yourself having too many issues, play super defensively. Make sure you save up your pain to use it on several soul carves because they'll heal you so quickly. And just keep everything on cooldown once again. There's zero downtime with a Demon Hunter tank. And that's basically Demon Hunter tank. It's been one of the best tanks that I've played on the beta thus far. Maybe it's just because it's all brand new and it's all exciting, but it seems like they have a really nice toolkit, especially for dealing damage. The amount of damage that these guys deal is absolutely insane. I can't believe that even more damage is added when you play about with the artifact traits, but I can't see us being anything but overpowered when we get that artifact fully powered up, which is obviously going to take a while, but if you go for the really powerful abilities first, like healing for the fire damage you deal, and then go for a fire damage build like I have with your talents, I don't see anything touching you whatsoever. I mean, with these 4 mobs, 200k DPS, you couldn't really ask for more, and you come out of every fight with full health. I hope showing off the dungeon gameplay and the solo gameplay showed you how this all comes together and how it really plays and feels, instead of just whacking a dummy. So that's it for this video. If you have any questions or queries, please leave them in the comment section below and I'll try to get back to you. Remember to leave a like just below the video before you leave, and if you want to see more, make sure to subscribe. But apart from that, thanks for watching folks, good luck and have fun, and as always, I will see you next time.